Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning. The Contemporary Issues class. We are going to talk today about the near-death experiences. And so something I've always kind of been interested in and have read the books as they've come out, including the very simple Idiot's Guide to Near-Death Experiences, to the books that the doctors have written. You know, doctors have had this experience and written books from a more scientific point of view. And so thought it would be a great experience also to talk to of our class members, longtime St. Andrew members, Connie Dix and Bob Alexander, and have them tell us what their experiences were. And so that is our topic today. Before we start, as usual, announcements. Zoomers, welcome. Folks who are on Zoom, can you still hear us okay, Susan and Joe? Good, thank you. Please mute yourself in the lower left corner of your screen. And we are, and Carolyn, thanks for being with us too, and Rosalie. And we are recording this for future playback for those who can't be here today. And any other announcements? Things going on? Bob and I were just talking about this. It seems like the longest fall in Colorado that we ever can remember, because today is the deadline for the latest snow ever in Denver. So we're going to be setting a record today, and hopefully it'll snow sometime, at least in the mountains. So those of us who are skiers can go do that.
Don't forget the party.
Yes, Alice says we don't want to forget our Christmas party coming on December 12th, and you all are invited to that. I'd like to come over to the Galloway's house, so that'll be fun too. Okay, any other announcements?
Can you send out another detail? We're new and I somehow lost the details.
Yes, Ron, we will.
Video?
You bet.
Is that ugly Christmas sweater time too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes, probably another, this year we'll also have an award for the ugliest Christmas sweater or ugliest outfit. Yes. Always a good chance to do that. Okay, lots going on in the news. We're not going to take time today to talk about that, but politics and things in the news are just going crazy as usual. So we're going to just jump right in and start here. I'm going to share my screen. And just our format today is I am going to present a little bit about the topic and the books, some of the famous books that have been out with the basics of this topic in case folks don't know much about it. We'll just run through the basic common elements of the near-death experience. And then, but I won't take long. And then I'm going to ask Connie to share her experience and then ask Bob to share his. And we're just going to be informal and ask them questions that come to your mind too. Okay, so as I start here, go to where I can scroll up a little bit. The books that are out really approach this from two options. Is the near-death experience really the soul detaching and visiting the next dimension, heaven or hell? In some cases, there's bad experiences. Or is it the brain creating an experience similar to dreaming? You all have probably heard of some of these books and films that have been bringing this out. The most popular one in recent decades has been 1975, Raymond Moody, called Life After Life. Really brought this forward into our common discussion. He was a psychiatrist who related the experience of hundreds of near-death experience patients. He also claims to have had a near-death experience himself in 1991 when he attempted suicide, and that was a result of an undiagnosed thyroid condition which affected his mental state. I didn't know much about that until I read that in his biography. Then another one lots of us have heard about is the Harvard neurologist, Dr. Eben Alexander, who was in a coma in the hospital, found himself having an NDE, Swimming through mud was the way he described the first part of it. And then he emerged into the bright light in heaven, and he rode on a butterfly's back as it gave him a tour of the heavenly realm. And he is convinced that the mind can exist separate from the brain, which is completely shut down. And as he studied that as a neurologist, he believed his brain was completely shut down. And that was the focus of his book. And Dr. Mary Neal is one we've also heard about. She drowned in a kayak accident, was underwater for 20 minutes. She did the typical tunnel to a light. She was an orthopedic spine surgeon and a Christian, and she is convinced that she went to heaven. And finally, there was a little book called Heaven is for Real, about this 3-year-old boy that in Nebraska that had an experience, and the main thing came out of this one, his experience. He met family members, including a sister.
Steve, that was made into a movie
It
too.
was made into a movie, yes.
However, was that the one that has been debunked since then?
Yes.
Could be,
I think it has been.
could be. I think there was
The
something
father
about
kind of, coached the kid and worked on him.
Okay.
I think they debunked it.
There are some of those
Oh, my
cases,
gosh.
some of those cases that have come out. Some people have taken advantage of this whole thing too.
Wow.
So that's important to bring out. Just a basic explanation, definition. Near-death experience is an experience associated with death or impending death, which researchers claim share similar characteristics. A variety of sensations, including detachment from the body, feelings of levitation, serenity, security, warmth, and the presence of the light. When negative, these experiences may include sensations of anguish. They also relate this to out-of-body experiences where a person perceives the world from a location outside their physical bodies. The researchers say that OBEs, out-of-bodies, can be induced also by traumatic brain injuries, sensory deprivation, psychedelic drugs, and electrical stimulation of the brain. Also by hallucinogens, including ketamine, an anesthetic, and LSD. So some people are looking at this from that perspective too, of course. But writers in the field of parapsychology have written that OBEs are not psychological. They believe that the soul can detach itself from the body and visit distant locations. During the Victorian period, this was known as traveling clairvoyance. And in old scriptures, it's also referred to, and in the Native American community also, they used peyote as one of the drugs that gave them visions and some out-of-body experiences also. So it comes in from different perspectives. A little on the historical, just very briefly on the historical research of it. NDEs have been recorded since ancient times, as long as people have been around. The oldest medical report was from the 1700s, a French doctor who described these in his book, The Anecdotes of Medicine. 1892, there was a subjective observation study that recorded these stories by war soldiers, people who'd fallen from heights, and drownings. In 1968, there was a book published that was not as successful or as popular as the one in 1975 by psychiatrist Raymond Moody. And he's the one that coined the near-death experience term, and also started to identify the panoramic life experience, the light, the tunnel, and other common experiences. Researchers have identified the common elements that define it. Actually, let me scroll just a little bit farther here. And common steps in order. And this is taken from this book, The Idiot's Guide, which did a pretty good job of actually summarizing in simple terms the research. The common steps, and of course, they say this varies Not every person, as we'll hear these folks today say, to have this experience in this exact order, but it is first a sense of awareness of being dead. Second, a sense of peace and well-being, painlessness, a sense of being removed from the world, and then an out-of-body experience, observing medical professionals performing resuscitation, for example. Then the tunnel experience, or entering a darkness, moving through or up a passageway or a staircase. A rapid movement toward or sudden immersion in a powerful light. An intense feeling of unconditional love. Encountering beings of light, dressed in white. Also possibility of being reunited with loved ones. A life review, seeing one's life flash before the eyes, and approaching a border or a decision by oneself to return to the body. And then suddenly finding oneself back in the body. And let me mention just a couple things I thought was interesting about researchers who have tested some of this. One of them is Dr. Sam Parnia in Southampton, England, who did an NDE study that started in 2008. In this, he tested people that were in UK hospitals for cardiac arrest. And he did a test in which he installed shelves in the cardiac rooms, and then he put images on top of the shelves. So the images could only floated, if their soul floated to the top of the room and looked down on the image to try to identify that. And so his results with that were that 9% of those people who seemed to have died the cardiac events had near-death experiences, only 9%. Some of those who reported leaving their bodies could accurately describe the resuscitation, but none of them saw the images at the top of the room. And so it said that 12 patients reported leaving their bodies, but none could describe the hidden visual targets. Some said they floated in opposite directions of the targets, and others said they didn't float high enough to see the target. So they tried to get at objectively some analysis of that. Other theories, just briefly two here. Some scientists believe the NDEs are a form of withdrawal to protect the individual from the stressful. Some say they think reliving of the trauma of birth. Since a baby travels from the darkness of the womb to light and is greeted by love, and dying brain could be recreating that passage from tunnel to the light. Neuroscientist in 2009 suggests that damage to the occipital cortex may lead to the visual features of seeing a tunnel and to the emotional experiences and memory flashbacks. Other scientists attribute NDEs to the release of endorphins that can lead to a reduction in pain perception and a pleasant emotional experience. And even other scientists say they think it's oxygen deprivation. And they point to some pilots who have had similar experiences when G forces are put on them very rapidly in their planes, and that a lack of sufficient blood supply to the brain has often caused pilots to have bright lights, out-of-body experience, vivid dreams of beautiful places. So there's some connection to that. So I want to just make a comment here too, that by saying the other side here, I believe it could be either way. I don't know. I'm open to both. You know, I believe it could be our soul detaching and going to heaven. Absolutely. Or it could be, as some of the scientists believe and speculate on all of these biological and physiological aspects coming into play. But even if it's proven someday, in my opinion, it's more of a brain chemistry, physiological response. That doesn't mean we don't have a soul and we can't be resurrected and go to a heaven later on. Folks don't see it that way, that if it's someday proven that this is more a brain chemistry event, that it would hurt their faith in the possibility of the soul and of eternal life. So that's just my thought. Okay, last thing I want to say, after effects. There's much in the literature about the after effects and their outlook on life. Many of the researchers have identified a consistent belief change in people who've had near-death experiences. They found a greater appreciation for life, compassion for others, and many have changed their lives and become more service-oriented and much more embracing of a purpose and elevated spirituality. So we'd like to hear if that was your case too. Okay, before I turn to Connie, any questions about or comments about that?
I would just like to put in, we all, as we get older, are going to have to experience nearer death experiences every day. I think as we age, we go through, we have grandchildren or great grandchildren, or we start drawing Social Security. We hit a point, it doesn't happen maybe in one day. We just kind of wake up one day and realize that this ball game isn't forever.
Right? Yeah.
So we have near death experiences, frequency.
General, yes, okay. Okay, let me turn on, so we get a little extra of volume here and let Connie.
To hold it, and
Sure.
can you hear me? Okay,
And just hold up a little closer, Connie.
okay, can you hear me better?
There you go.
Okay, just let me know.
Okay.
So I am here today to tell you that death is nothing to fear, that it's actually a wonderful experience. So, and it changed my life for the better. So let me tell you about what happened in this place. So I was in a coma for approximately 2.5 months after I was in a bad car accident on February 13th, 1994. Just before the Olympics were going to start, and it was winter time. On a clear day, I was up in Santa Barbara, California, coming home, and there was no traffic. I was with a gentleman that actually was going 70 miles an hour, and he hit a stalled car. And he only used his brake for 5 feet. And that car flipped over the top of us and caught fire. And so he just pulled over the side of the road and he said, "Oh, she's okay. She doesn't need anything." I had no blood, nothing. So I just sat there thinking, I was just shook up. They put the fire out, took her away, everything came back to me, and I was shaking like a leaf. Well, it turned out that I had internal injuries, and I was shaking so bad that they couldn't even hardly keep me on the gurney. So, and I can remember the paramedic giving me a special pillow that a group had made, and he was saying, this is something that we want to give you, something special, because you're hurt so bad. So from there,
Could you use your microphone a little bit?
okay, from there I went into surgery immediately. They happened to have a doctor that was able to open me up, and I lost 55% of my liver, my gallbladder, my spleen. I broke my back, my hip, my knee. I ended up having edema. I gained 70 pounds at that time, and I had double pneumonia. So I was really, really sick. I wasn't expected to live. So they had me on this, a lot of medication, and I can remember that I was dreaming in red. I don't know if you've ever dreamed in red. I have never dreamed in red any other time, but I wasn't awake either. I was just, but I knew I would have these dreams like the devil or something like that. So they told my family to get a plot that I wasn't going to live, and so they were talking. I guess they had a new drug or something. So this drug saved my life. But what happened is during this time that I was so bad, I could actually hear some at the time, but I could not talk or anything. But I kind of knew if somebody was holding my hand. So when I had the out-of-body experience, my daughter was there with me, and she held my hand. She didn't know I was going to have this. I didn't know. And she was holding my hand, and I could hear her talking. And all of a sudden, I just remember starting to go up, and I could hear her less and less. And I started going up this white light, and you go up slowly, and it's wonderful, and it's painless. And all of a sudden, I was on my way. And I actually saw a very, very special uncle partway up, and he welcomed me into heaven. And I wasn't all the way up yet. And he was a religious person, did a lot for his church. I was very close to him. So he went up with me, and
Was it in words?
huh?
Did he speak words to you?
Well, it seemed like he spoke to me, like he just said, welcome, good to have you here. Come with me, I'll take you up. And then when I got up to heaven, it was like being in a big white cloud, and there were spirits everywhere, just flitting around. You could flit around like a bug, but you recognize people. And I know it might not make sense to you, but I could recognize people. And it was wonderful, and I didn't hurt anymore, and there was no pain, and there was no dreaming, and it was fabulous, and I loved being up there. And so I don't know, all of a sudden they wanted me to talk to Jesus. So Jesus said to me, your work is not done. And with that, I came crashing back down. And it was awful to come back down because I felt like I just went like this and I came down. And then it was like I was hurting again, and it was because I was really sick, and everything. And I think I tried to say I just went to heaven, and my daughter was like, I can remember she called the nurse, and she thought I was crazy, So anyway, I was still in the hospital still, but I ended up, that was it. That was how it was for me, just like that. So it changed my life, and that like Jesus telling me that my work is not done. I really feel like I try to do good works if I can, even if they're just small things to help people. like all the time. I think I'm more conscious of people and trying to help them, even trying to help them understand death and that it's okay. And maybe their relatives are have died, or that they're afraid of dying. So actually, my church took care of me for a year because I had a tube in me. And I had a standing ovation when I went back to church. So it took a community to take care of me because I was really, really sick. So
And when you told them about your experience, how was it received in the church?
they were just blown away. It was just wonderful, the love that I received from these people. And my minister saw me every single day. He came to see me during this time, or his assistant came to see me. And I mean, the temporary aid center, they brought me insured. I had the, and people brought food, they coordinated it, they took me to the doctors, they did everything because I was single. So anyway, it was a wonderful experience for me, actually. But I went through a lot to have this experience, so it's not something you just have easily, I wouldn't say. So, are there any questions?
Did you have a sense of time when you were?
Sense of time.
No, I have no idea. But I loved being up there and floating around, and I was so disappointed to have to come back down.
What was your image of Jesus that you communicated with? What did you?
He was the only one that was dressed. Just like an image of Jesus as we think of with the robe, that was how Jesus looked to me. So there was no thinking, well, is this really him? Or it was really him. And the other people that I knew up there.
Dress, did you say?
With
Dressed, floating dress. Were they dressed the same or?
Nobody had clothes. We were like bugs up there. Our spirits were more like a bug. We weren't dressed. No, and we weren't in our bodies either. We were just more.
Did you recognize anyone?
Even though I could recognize them, I can't tell you how I was able to do that, but I did.
Was this the last day of the coma?
Was this the last day of the coma?
No, it really wasn't. It wasn't.
You were still in the coma?
Yeah.
But you were able to.
But they were able to give me something, I guess, because they were thinking I was going to die right then, and they were able to give me something that helped me get well. But I was sick for a very long time. They even had sent me home, 3 or 4 weeks later. I had to go back to the hospital because I had double pneumonia. And if you know what edema is, it's fluid on your body. I was 70 pounds overweight, and the fluid was coming out my body. And I do remember this after the coma, that my body was just leaking everywhere, like all over me. I was wet, everywhere. So they sent me home with that condition. So, and I didn't even think anything of it, which is kind of strange, but it,
But
a lot of strange things. But the love I received was wonderful, and I feel like I want that love to people, to other people, if I can help them in any way. So, is there any other question?
Bob, and then ask questions of both of them that we think of. 'Cause Bob has a different experience.
Yeah, mine's different, but there's some similarities, which is really wild. I'll be honest with you, I have not read any NDE books. I don't know what my thoughts were prior to this. And for me, it was just a really extremely emotional experience. And I'll try to do this without being overwhelmed. It's difficult for me. I lived with a severe heart problem my entire life, and I didn't know I had it. I'm an extreme endurance athlete. Runs 100-mile races, Ironmans, marathons, trail races, long bike rides, hundreds of miles. So didn't know I had this. And I went to, my wife, what drove me crazy, physical, in person. Usually, I would, a lot of years, get my blood tested, like annually. But just, I want you to go to that. I was like, I finally gave in, and I went to see my PCP, my primary care physician. And he listened to my heart, and I don't ever remember in my life someone listening here. Okay, so he listened here, not just here and on my back. Most people, it seems like when I'm gonna get a doctor, listen, okay, they're all over here, and then they go to your back. He listened here, and he said, I said, Bob, he listened over here. He said, wait a minute, I gotta listen again. And he had me breathe, and he listened again, and he said, you have a severe heart murmur. It's booming. Oh. And he sent me to a cardiologist, and South Denver Cardiology. And I had a combination, they call it an echo and an EKG. And it was, since I'm a runner, they wanted to know what happened when I'm running. So this is a crucial aspect of my leading to my experience. I wasn't allowed to warm up. So I got on the treadmill. So they did an echo first. I got on the treadmill, helped me out with the EKG, and I started running. And they kept raising the elevation every 2 minutes. So, I mean, I'd done Ironman events, stuff like that, so I could run all day long. So they kept speeding it up and increasing the elevation every 2 minutes. I finally got to 15. 15 was the percent. No, it was all the way up. And I was running flat out, okay? I'm running flat out. And they said, remember, Bob, 45 seconds out, they're gonna do a contrasting EKG the second time. So it's a regular, echocardiogram, echocardiogram, and then I did an EKG, and then it was gonna be a contrast echocardiogram to see the effect of my blood flow in my heart. So, and how were the valves doing? So I got to 15%, I'm flat out. Now I remember looking, and my heart was all over the place. On the CRT, it was 300 and something. It was 48. It was 67. It was 125, 200 something. It was jumping all over the board, and I didn't know what was happening to me. I grabbed the handrails and I kept running. He said, remember, this is an aspect of my personality. In 2003, this is 2009, I should say this, okay, 2009, and it's August of 2009, August 20th. And so I'm an endurance athlete, and the first Ironman I ever did was the first triathlon I ever did. I had never done a triathlon in my life, and my wife was a cancer survivor, and she just got through radiation, and what can I do to honor her? And I said, I'm doing an Ironman. I heard about Kona, so I swam 2.5 miles. I rode my bike 112, and 26.2 mile marathon. And I finished in 15 hours and 56 minutes, and I got the medal. Okay, and so I finished, and it was in the heat. It was over 100 degrees. It was really hot. I refused to give up. And she was at the finish line, and I ran into her arms. And this was 2003. So this is my personality, I have to say that. So I'm on the treadmill, and I don't give up. Okay, I'm feeling really bad, and I have never given up. So I just grabbed the handrail, and I kept running. And I remember them telling me, "Need 45 seconds." At that moment, I I don't know if this was an NDE. You know what I mean? My heart went into ventricular tachycardia, and I was gone. And I was running, and the next thing I remember was I was flying. Someone had grabbed me up, and I was going so fast, and then and it was so beautiful. There were colors beyond description, that auras of light, and headed towards one aura of light that was beyond description. Oh my, I can't even describe it. And I started floating then in the sky or wherever I was. I don't have any idea. And this creates more questions for me than it answers. Okay. So I'm not sure if this is chemicals. I really don't know what this was. But so many things happen because of it that it really confuses me. Okay. And I have to share some of them beyond the experience. Go ahead.
Did you collapse on the treadmill?
No, I kept running.
Or your body was going through it?
My body was still going through it, and my mind was someplace else. Okay. And I was dying. Okay. And it was not beating my heart. And they told me it was not beating. It wasn't into ventricular tachycardia. It was just going like this. So doctors that might be here, I was in BTAC, and I was able to run, and I was holding up. That's right. I remember I was holding on. So I'm able to. So now he said, like I said, there's some similarity. He did say, he said, "You're not done. You're not done. I have so much more for you to do." And around me were people, and I couldn't recognize faces. There were so many children, I can't tell you how many children. And there were auras of light, and there were adults, okay? And Bob, he said, "Bob, it's gonna be so difficult for you, but you must have faith. And have faith in me, and I will be with you always. And I'll be with you." And he said, "But you need to go back." I said, "I don't want to go back." He's showing me he said, "They need you. They need you. And you must go back to them." He showed me my wife and my children. And what would happen if I didn't go back. And it was a horrible image. Oh my gosh. They were crying. And all of a sudden I went back, and I'm on the treadmill, and I'm holding on, and he's yelling at me, 45 seconds. I sweat, and I yelled 45 seconds, when I hit the treadmill, and I started running again. And they injected me with the dye. And before I said, "Well, when will I get the results from this?" And they said, "Well, about a week. You'll hear from the cardiologist in about a week." Well, when I came out and they finished the EKG, and they stopped the treadmill, and they did the 45 seconds, and then I was done. Then they would do the echocardiogram, but the cardiologist was in the room. Remember, they were going to take a week. Well, the cardiologist was in the room. Okay. So, and she says, "Bob, you need open heart surgery like now." Okay. You need open heart surgery. And they did echo. They said half of your blood supply was going in the wrong direction. It is going. 50% of your blood supply is flowing backwards. Your mitral valve, severe mitral valve prolapse with regurgitation, resulting in half your blood supply. It said, "I don't know how you're alive." And I just raced to the top of Mount Evans 3 months earlier on my bike. Okay, 14,000 feet. And I felt so bad. They have pictures of me afterwards. I just sitting against the wall going, and I just kept pushing myself and pushing myself. And she said, you need open heart surgery. And I had so many divine experiences. I call this divine because it creates. So remember all the children and all this. I still didn't know what was going on. Okay, so, but I have to share this too beyond the experience. Like within weeks after surgery, I was running. I ran the Boulder. I had open heart surgery in December on the day after Christmas. There's a whole story around this that I should share at some point because I had a dynamic experience when I meditated. I didn't take drugs, but I meditated and I saw my surgery. an hour, a 20-minute meditation turned into an hour. Okay, they said, I can't do the open heart surgery as soon as possible. Remember, it's August, maybe next year by the spring or early summer. And I have I'm taking 150 milligrams of metoprolol, and I can't do anything. And so I called the nurse and I said, can I get it earlier? Is there any way? She said, no, I'm sorry. It's at the Cleveland Clinic. We're booked all the way up. So we hung up. I said, thank you. I said, Karen, I want to meditate. And I do japa meditation. So I did my 20-minute meditation that turned into an hour. And that hour, I saw my whole. I knew I was going to be fine. I'm a high-strung person that you'd have to give something to settle down. Okay, I'll be honest with you. Okay, with something like this. And I saw it. I called the nurse the next day. I said, well, excuse me. She called me the next day on the phone. The phone rings and I call her. He said Cleveland Clinic. Okay. It was after meditation. She says, can you do the surgery on Christmas Eve? I said, of course. I said, thank you for moving the surgery. She said, I didn't. I said, something happened and a slot opened up. I don't understand. I said, when did this happen? And it happened while I was meditating. I can't just, I don't understand it. And so I had the surgery. They moved it one day. So it was on the 23rd, not on the 24th. So they moved it up the day I was in ICU on Christmas Eve. And I recovered fairly quickly. Within weeks, I Boulder in May after having severe open heart surgery and arrhythmias. And after that, I did more than 30 races in the next 2 years. Okay, I'll pass this around. This was my race schedule. And I'm an endurance athlete, if you want to see it. And I never did this in my life. I would normally do one race. And then one or two, if you're a runner, you might do a B race or a C race. That's just a part of them. Okay, that's like 27 races there. I gave every one of my medals to children that were having, that had congenital heart defects. I don't know how many children I touched. I wore this for the New York City Marathon, and I gave my medal to Aiden here in Denver, and she gave me a little. She was 3 years old. She was 3 years old. At the end of the whole thing, I did Ironman Arizona, and all along this whole way, I built my Twitter up to more than 1 million followers, and I was touching congenital heart defect survivors all across the nation. Jonathan in Washington, state of Washington, the teacher reached out to me, and he had the same defect I did. And he was in elementary school, and I talked to him and his parents on the phone. And I ran the Big Sur Marathon. I ran 8 marathons, and I gave him my Big Sur Marathon medal, and I sent it to him in the mail, and to give him hope. And I gave her my medal, my medal as well from the New York City Marathon, Hayden. And so I gave all my medals away, and I'll finish this up. But what was so touching is all those children I saw, I guess, in the sky. I sent him the medal, and a week later I got a package from Washington, and I said, "Oh no, they sent me the package. They sent me my medal back." Well, I opened it up, and you know what was in there? A card from every single child in the elementary class. To me, Bob, you're my hero. I mean, I'm no hero. I can't even, so my last event was Ironman Arizona, and I'll end this. I struggled. I did an Ironman after open heart surgery, 23 months. I finished in 16:33. And I put the medal around a little girl, 6 years, that heart transplant at 5. Experience, it changed my life. I mean, I can't tell you.
Thank you for sharing.
I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was, but it was.
Well, that's our question for you both is, what do you think it was? What do you think caused it?
What caused us to have the out-of-body?
To have the out-of-body experience?
I hadn't had them before. I had them meditating when I saw my surgery.
Mhm.
And then they called me next, I mean, what do you think caused it? I really don't know. I mean, for me, you talk about faith and here, maybe I'm stretching here to see it. My wife had cancer and she's like, she's the person who gives back so much. And it really questioned my faith. It really made me question my faith, to be honest with you. And I went through a period where I'm sure I had arguments with God. Okay, why would you do this to her? She paralyzed the left side of her face. She had multiple surgeries. Why would you do this to this beautiful person and this awesome person that gives back to everybody? Okay, why would you do that? And it still can make me mad to this day. And maybe you talked about maybe one in here. Maybe it was to help increase my faith.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, because it definitely increased my faith. Oh my gosh.
That's what some of these advocates say, is that they think the NDEs happen to people who need a boost in their faith. And so that's the reason it happens. So what do you think, Connie? Go ahead and take the microphone. We've
Well,
got about 10.
I think it oh, yeah,
If you want, you can see.
yeah,
I didn't bring your cards.
I think I was dying, when this happened, and for whatever reason, my work wasn't done, and I didn't really go into what I had done, but I had met a family. We moved to the East Coast, New Hampshire, and I met a really nice family. They had 3 kids. It was my chiropractor, actually, and he took his family, and I saw them the day before. They took his family, and he went skiing, and his wife was killed in an avalanche. And immediately he called me, and I went over there, and I talked with his children to help his children understand that their mother was in an okay place, and to give them what they needed and whatnot. And then a week or 2 later, he calls me back and he said, well, I want you to take all of her clothing and make it into 4 quilts. So they were Mormons, so I was surprised that he would call on me. And anyway, we made quilts for his children and for him. So I don't think it was anything that I would have done before.
Yeah.
And I just, my faith has been strong. So
I have one additional, I want to question, but this touched my life so much that I did so many events and I ran so many things on the treadmill, even at Lifetime Fitness. I ran marathons. I did 50-mile races, runs on the treadmill. I ran 100 miles for charity to raise $30,000. I ran 50 miles on the treadmill, and there was a person behind me. I gave lectures at the hospital about going to the doctor. You have annual physicals. You do this, okay? And so I was talking to people and lecturing, and I was running, and after I had completed the 50-miler in 11 and a half hours about, the next week, a guy comes up to me. He said, "Thank you, Bob." I said, "For what?" "For saving my dad's life." I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "I was running behind you when you ran 50 miles. And you inspired me so much. I remembered your story. I went home. It was Christmas holidays that following year. It was my year anniversary. I ran 50 miles. And so from surgery, and he said, his dad was not feeling well. And remember, I was lecturing and I was telling people, I said, if you don't feel well, you need to go to the doctor. Okay. And he had some of the symptoms I had. He went to the doctor and he had a triple bypass right on the spot. They gave his dad a triple bypass. Wow. So I don't know how this all happens. I don't, but is there any question?
I'd like to ask both of you. There are 2 movies that are spiritual movies. One is Ghost, that I just dearly love, and it has that particular type of thing, spirituality and so forth. And then the other is the sixth sense, where it says, where the little boy says, I see dead people and they don't know they're dead.
Oh, yeah.
And
I
I've
remember
been
that.
wondering, do you have any relationship? Have you watched those movies and have you had any feeling of that type of thing happening to you?
Like, what do you mean? Like, I've seen those two movies. Have you seen? Yeah, I've seen, especially that one where he saw dead people.
Right.
I don't, like right now, do I?
No, during those out of body experiences, did you have any? feeling
I didn't
of
have
that?
I didn't have a great childhood, and my father was an alcoholic, and it was a horrible childhood. And my parents apologized to me. Parents apologized. I didn't recognize their faces. Everybody was oars of light, but they apologized to me.
Wow.
Mhm.
So,
Go ahead, Connie.
Did you have any experience?
What was
When you go, the movie Ghost,
Ghost.
and then The Sixth Sense about seeing dead people, kind of having psychic abilities too. So
Oh, do I have
did you
them now?
connect to those movies? Do you remember those movies? And do you have psychic abilities now?
Oh, I don't think I have
I
psychic
don't.
abilities now.
Yeah, no, but
I have a question.
Okay.
Steve,
And then-
this is for you in your book.
Okay.
Idiot's Guide to, in that book or other books you've read, is this a common phenomenon all the way around the world, or is it?
The books do say that there are cultural differences, that there are these steps are somewhat common, but all the NDE people don't follow every step, but the seeing the light in people is common, but there are cultural interpretations too. So in America, where we believe in angels, and people see the spirits as being angels. In some other country, Hindu countries, I think they said they see them as different spirit guides that have some different meaning in their religion. So yes, there are cultural differences. We've got about 5 more minutes left. I want to let the Zoomers come in too and ask any
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
questions
okay.
if they can too.
Yeah.
Excuse me for interrupting. Anybody on Zoom want to ask a question? Please don't hesitate. Just unmute yourself and go ahead. We want to let you get in. Okay, if you don't, we're going to continue. Gene was first and then Carrie.
First of all, deeply appreciative, I'm sure we all are, of your sharing these intimate details. You may be giving us a glimpse of what we're all in store for. So I think we have to be, as Steve said, certainly it's a great mystery. It's a great mystery. Immediately begin to think of experiences that all of us, some of us have shared. You think of the Apostle Paul on the road to Damascus, struck
Yes.
down by a bright light. If any of you have been to a Pentecostal worship service speaking in tongues, I defy you not to be impacted by what you're experiencing. Certainly, there's another example. When I was in graduate school, I wish I had participated now. These are induced experiences with hallucinogenic drugs. When I was in graduate school at Boston University, Timothy Leary was an experiment. I wish I had participated. I did, but some of my buddies and classmates did. Using LSD, it was a matched group, so it was a control group and an experimental group, properly orchestrated. Hypnosis can also induce an out-of-body experience as well. Tink Tinker recently retired at Iowa School of Theology. He has spoken here at St. Andrews over the last 25, 30 years off and on. Gave the commencement speech a couple years ago. Anyway, he created a great deal of controversy about 25 years ago here in Denver because excuse me, I hope I'm correct on this, because he founded the Native American Church right up from Oklahoma. They used peyote to induce the out-of-body religious experience, etc. Very controversial, created a lot of controversy back there, as I remember. I think the verdict is not in. I think it's a great mystery. And I certainly appreciate you being intimate and sharing, willing to share something that is very personal that all of us will experience, have, or have seen. So thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Gene.
Did you have a question?
Okay, Carrie.
My question is, how has your sharing of your experience, I know it's impacted the lives because you all have told us about the impact of what you've come back to do, right? You've told us that. What has it done for the people around, the faith of those? Has it been reassuring? Have they told you? Somebody very close to me had this experience as an infant, and just hearing that experience has made me not fear death. Right? Because my trust in that person's experience has made me recognize, oh my gosh, this is something that we can experience. And so other people near you that you've shared all those experiences with.
Yes, yeah,
They also said,
Yes.
I'm not.
right.
Definitely. I get a lot, yes.
Yeah.
definitely.
Definitely. People and people here have not known it, but in my hometown, I was called on it. And when we moved to New Hampshire, I seem to have several people that know it, and then the word would get around and I would be called on to help more people. And I think it was very fulfilling to me to see that it would help people. And that's my goal, to help people. The death is not something to fear. So either in yourself or a loved one. So if I can help, I hope I've helped all of you today.
Yeah.
I've helped too, and I get the same thing by a lot of people. And to ask your question, that meditation was definitely I wasn't dead during that. That was the one where I saw my surgery. I can't explain that. And I didn't take any drugs or anything. I didn't even have a cup of coffee. And I just did my normal meditation, and all of a sudden I had an out-of-body experience. So I'm more confused right now than it answered, to be honest with you. I know that one thing I'm convinced that there's something out there. I don't know if I met, I don't know who I don't know what that was, but maybe you guys can help me, these scientists in this room, because I don't have a clue, but yeah.
Thank you.
Well, this has helped us be more, I think, open-minded about all the possibilities. And that's what I read in the books and the researchers has said, if we think just binary about this, also just a soul going to heaven or a brain under stress, we're maybe missing possibilities between those two.
Yeah.
We try not to think of male and female totally today, in a binary way. And maybe this is another area where there's overlap between souls, both ends, souls and chemistry and biology, and they're connected within us, and how are they released and all that. And so thank you for sharing again. And we appreciate that and wish you well in the future with that. Any final thoughts or comments? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Zoomers, for joining us today. We're on to review, and so come join us next week. Thanks.
It's Fiona Hill's book.
Oh, good.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Ready.
What's the title of it?
And the title is
Sure,
basically,
isn't it?
It is a
there's
mystery.
no
Yeah,
place for you
why
here.
us?
Oh, definitely. There's
The
all
central
that part.
focus of the book
We
is
talk about this like for hours.
diminished
Oh, I know.
opportunity